Let's make some sourdough sandwich bread. Super simple recipe to follow. Even if this is your first time making bread, I promise that you will not feel overwhelmed. Most of the staples needed in this recipe you probably already have in your cabinet, so just pull them out, relax, and just make sure that you have super active, bubbly sourdough starter. That was the first thing that I made sure to master before jumping into making bread, was having a really good sourdough starter, and you have to make sure that it is active. So this morning I had fed my starter half a cup of all-purpose flour, half a cup of water, let it sit in a warm place to make sure that it was ready to start making bread. And here I'm just using 1 cup of active starter, very bubbly active starter. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of honey. You can use sugar if you like. I do like using the honey better. I will be adding 1 tablespoon of salt and making sure to put that all into my mixer. You do not need to use a mixer. This recipe does not call for a mixer. You can hand mix. I do have a mixer and I'm just going to use it. I like that it gives me the texture that I'm wanting for my flour, my dough. I will also be adding 2.5 cups of water. You do not want to use hot water. It will kill your yeast. You want to use preferably filtered water or well water. You don't want to use faucet water because the chlorine in the water will kill your yeast. I will also be using 8 cups of all-purpose flour, but I will not be adding them all together because I want to perfect the texture that I'm looking for. And this recipe does call for 2 loaves, so that is what I'm aiming for, to have 2 really nice, decent sized loaves. So I will add in 4 to 6 cups of flour to start, and then I will start mixing and then add the extra 2 cups as needed. I don't want that sticky, flaky texture. You want to make sure that it has a nice stretch to it, that it is all mixed in very well. So I did mix it for about 20 minutes on and off with adding the extra 2 cups of flour, and here you can see it had a really nice stretch to it. What you will do is take a nice large bowl and you'll grease it. I prefer to use coconut oil. You can add butter to that if you like, but I use coconut oil. I like to just grease my bowl with coconut oil because we do use half a cup of softened butter. You can also use coconut oil to add to your dough, but I do use a half cup of soft butter adding into my mixture. So therefore I use my coconut oil to grease my bowl, and once I place it into my bowl after kneading just for a few minutes, not too much of the kneading needed, I add it into my grease bowl and I allow it to rise. I did allow this to rise for 6 hours. The longer you allow it to rise, it will have more of a sour taste. If you're looking for your family to get really used to having sourdough bread, you might want it to sit for a longer period of time, therefore they'll get used to that taste. I had it sit for 6 hours so that it can rise because we were having this bread for dinner, so I wanted it to be ready. And once it had did its first rise, I then greased 2 bread loaf pans with coconut oil and I kneaded my bread. I divided the dough into 2, then kneaded it for a few minutes, and I placed them into my grease loaf pans and I allowed it to sit for a second rise. And when I allowed it to sit for that rise, I made sure to place it in a warm place, and then I put it into the oven at 375 for 45 minutes to allow that nice brown crispy exterior and soft on the inside. Pulled it out of the oven and allowed it to cool for 20 minutes inside the loaf pan. Although it was not fully cooled when I cut it because my family was eager to have it with their dinner, it was still a little warm on the inside, but it still had such a beautiful texture. It cut so nicely. It was crispy on the outside and nice and tender on the inside. If you could see, there's still a little smoke coming out of it because it was still kind of warm, but the family was in a rush to enjoy their delicious sourdough sandwich bread. They did enjoy a nice sandwich the day after, and look at all that